Hello friends, this is Worm, day late and a dollar short with yesterday's video, and today I wanted to talk about the upcoming map pack that we will have released to us next year in Destiny 2 for the Crucible. Now, of course, for just a brief explanation, if you missed it, Bungie a couple weeks ago got in some hot water with PvP players, so they basically promised that next year, we don't know when next year, but we assume it will drop with the final shape, there will be a map pack, as they call it, where we will get several new Crucible maps. Now, I wanted to talk about what's kind of, not what to expect, but what we're hoping for, right? What I'm personally hoping for in this map pack, and just kind of talk about, what it is that I want to see from it, the number of maps, just stuff like that. But first, I want to talk about when it's going to release, because Bungie does say next year. Next year could be at the final shape. Next year could also be like literally in a year from now, right? Like August of next year, September of next year. Like we don't know when exactly this map pack is going to come. Now, I would assume, of course, that Bungie would put it in with final shape. To me, it just makes the most sense. But, I don't want players to get like this idea that, oh, it's coming like January 1st or anything like that. Like, it's going to be a while before we see it. And of course, if you're an old adult like me, it's going to come really fast. But for you younger folk, time goes a little bit slower, luckily. Unluckily. But that is kind of the time frame we're looking at. I would say that a little part of me wants to say that it probably won't come with final shape, but literally the season after the final shape drops, that's when we'd get the map pack, right? Because they want the final shape to be this, big bang. Like they want people to focus on the final shape and the activities within the final shape because it's the closing of the Light and Darkness saga. To me, it doesn't make sense that they would add a map pack with it because players would just want to go and do the Crucible and not finish the Light versus Darkness saga / campaign, blah, blah, blah. So I could see it coming maybe the season after or the episode after. I don't know exactly how Bungie is going to do the episodes versus seasons thing, but yeah, that's roughly when I think it'll probably come out. But I want to talk about what I hope we see in that. And right out the gate, we need to talk about the number of maps that we are likely going to get. Bungie has not confirmed any numbers yet, so we don't know if we're going to get, 10 maps, if we're going to get 3 maps. Like, we don't know what it's going to be. But I think realistically here, 4 maps is probably what it's going to be, right? And quite frankly, 4 maps is the minimum that it can be for players to be okay with it, right? Now, obviously, on my end, I would hope, from a realistic standpoint, that it would be 5 maps, right? Like 5 new maps, just boom, smack into the game, let players play them, stuff like that. But I think that 4 is probably what they're going for, maybe even just 3. And that's really kind of like disheartening, I would say, like, because obviously we need more maps. We've gotten 2 brand new maps in the past, year, 2 or 3 years, something like that. Like, yeah, we've had a couple of D1, ports into D2, but those to me are not new maps, right? Like we need new maps. Now, obviously I'm talking from a veteran's standpoint. If you take something like, for example, Meltdown. If you didn't play Destiny 2 back in the early days, you never played Meltdown. So Meltdown was a brand new map to you. And I do understand that Bungie, when they're designing new maps and they're remaking old maps, there's a huge number of players that have never played on those old maps. So they are new to some players, not new to all players. But I think that PvP is a game mode that really does cater more to veterans. Like, I have some individuals, some friends and family that have recently got into Destiny 2. They don't touch the Crucible, right? Like they've got in once, they got smacked, and they don't get back in it because they're still new to Destiny. And, once you hit that, I would say maybe like a year mark, and you've had a chance to really get used to the PvE aspect of it and how level works and stuff like that, then maybe you jump into PvP. Right. But when it comes to, who they're trying to appeal to, it's mostly veteran players, right? Veteran players like you and me. Okay. So, when they're bringing new maps, like it's great to get, ported old maps, right? It's great to get those old maps, but we still need some new ones. And so I'm hoping this map pack is going to be all new maps, right? All new ones. And I would hope that we get 4 new ones and maybe 1 brought back from Destiny 1. Like one of the maps that we had in Destiny 1 that I still think of to this day was Asylum. It was a map that took place on Venus. It was a pretty decent map, especially in Trials, right? And we're going to talk about Trials versus 6s here in just a second. But that's a map that they could bring from Destiny 1 into Destiny 2. And no, it's not as easy as just copy and paste it, but like, you already have the map design. Like, yes, you have to build it from scratch. Take Distant Shore, for example. Distant Shore, the whole map had to change. But when you already have the layout, in my opinion, the layout is one of the most difficult things that you have to make as a game developer, because you have to make a layout that feels like it's going to work, like it's going to be smooth. Like, otherwise you get things like Firebase Echo. For anybody who remembers Firebase Echo was an awful map. It was a terrible map because the map was literally split into two sides. And right down the middle, there was this massive barrier where you had this long hallway that like went across the top. It was such a weird map. I hated it. I literally hated that map. Anytime I join in, I'd most of the time just leave because I hated that map so much. And they took it out of the game, thankfully. So there's that. But yeah, bringing in old maps, I think is a solid play. But for this map pack that they're trying to build hype for, at most we see one reprise map. We need to see 3 new ones, a minimum of 3 new ones, but preferably 4 new maps and 1 reprise map, if that's the route they're going to go. Now, in terms of the map, like how they play on 6s versus, in 3s, I think that the reasonable thing to do for Bungie would be have 2 small maps, right? 2 maps the size of something like Dead Cliff, something like Endless Vale, right? Those are smaller maps, lots of close quarter combat. There's some range, there's some mid, and I think, there's a couple places where you can do long range, but most of the map is close to mid range, right? We just got this Vex themed map this season. I can't remember the name of it. I've only played it like twice. But it's got a bunch of that close like quarters combat, a lot of tight areas, stuff like that, which is great. My overall experience with that map is positive, but I think the issue is the map is huge. Okay, like you spawn on C flag, it's 125 meters to get to B or something like that. Maybe I think maybe the next game is me playing on the map. I can't really remember, but it's still a long way. We need some more small maps, where the flag is just 50 meters away. The B flag is 50 meters from A and C, and then A and C are, maybe 60 to 75 meters from one another, right? Like a close, maybe not that close. I'm not an expert here, but a close quarters map is what everybody loves. Like really, like when I think of some of the best Destiny 2 maps, most of them are close quarters. Dead Cliffs. I love Dead Cliffs. Dead Cliffs is a small map. I shouldn't say close quarters. I should say small. Endless Vale is a good map. It's small, right? And there are some exceptions. Widow's Court is a fantastic map, and it's a bigger map, right? But it plays very, very well. Same thing with Distant Shore. So 2 small maps. So where I'm going with this, 2 small maps, I think would be adequate for the small. In terms of medium-sized maps, I think 1 medium-sized map. No, actually, take that back. I think 2 medium-sized maps. I don't think we need any long maps, right? We have Disjunction. Nobody likes Disjunction. Oh, no, I shouldn't say nobody. Most players don't like Disjunction. I don't like Disjunction, okay? Widow's Court, I would say, is a large map, but I would say it teeters medium to large because, like, Disjunction is a large map. It's linear, right? Widow's Court here, even though it's a big map, it's not linear. It's got this flow to it. You can go from A to B to C to A to B to C. Disjunction is not that. Like you go from A to B, then you spawn back in A. You go A to B, A to B, A to B, or C to B, C to B, C to B. You don't have the option to go in kind of like a triangular or a circular pattern around the map. So yeah, in terms of the map shape, obviously Bungie, they like to do a bunch of, they have I should say they have a fairly decent mix of asymmetric versus symmetrical maps, but I think in Destiny 2, asymmetric maps just work better. Disjunction is an example of a symmetrical map, right? For the most part. And it sucks. Why? Because symmetrical maps are linear, and linear maps to me don't feel as good in Destiny 2, right? Think of, I can't remember the name of it. Is it, I think it was called Pantheon back in Destiny 1, but it's the one that takes place on Mercury in the past or present or whatever. It's linear. I don't care much for that map. I don't care for Disjunction. These linear maps, to me, they just don't feel as good in Destiny 2. So I think seeing 4 asymmetric maps would be the best thing that we could see in Destiny 2. Or if they're gonna make them symmetric, make them have the routes of that circular flow to them, not this linear 3-lane 4-lane kind of thing, because I don't think the 3-lane 4-lane works as well in Destiny, right? But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on what we want from the actual like kind of map layouts. That's what we want from the map size. And I think outside of that, I would like to see more unique layouts, right? Like obviously we don't want too unique because then we get like Firebase Echo, which was horrendous. It was terrible. But I would like to see unique layouts with kind of some new like routes and flanks and stuff like that. Not just, hey, you know, go through this door and you know the enemy's gonna come from the left or something like that. You know, like having new, you know, layouts and having a fair bit of all different types of combat, right? Because even in small maps like Dead Cliffs, for example, you can have close range, you can have mid range, and you have long range on Dead Cliffs. And Dead Cliffs is a small map. Same thing with Endless Vale. Like Endless Vale, you have close, mid, long range, and it's a small map. Like I know Bungie can incorporate these, you know, these different areas into every map. Now, obviously, like we said earlier, 2 maps should be, you know, probably more fitted towards like close to mid range. 1 map that's maybe, you know, more fitted for mid to long. And then the last map needs to have like a fair balance of close, medium, and long, right? I don't think having just a map like Disjunction that is mostly long range, it works. It leads to passive, terrible play that's so boring. And that's one of the reasons why players don't care for Disjunction. That's one of the reasons I don't care for Disjunction, is because it's passive, right? But moving on to the next point here, of course, I think it's important to talk about 3v3s and 6v6s, right? Because these maps, they are going to have to cater to both. Like you can't just throw in a map that's going to work perfect for trials and then say, hey, it's going to work in 6s too, because that's not the case. Like that doesn't happen very frequently. Like Dead Cliffs, for example, that's a perfect example. Dead Cliffs is wonderful in 3v3s, but in 6s, it's a little bit weird. You know, there's a lot of spawn trapping in 6s. Like we don't want spawn trapping. I think spawn trapping is overall not good for the, you know, the environment of PvP, right? And there are some games where you can there are some maps where you can spawn trap very easily. You could technically spawn trap in most maps in the game if you have a team that knows what they're doing. But again, a team that knows what they're doing is very different from just hopping into solo queue and 6 solo players are able to spawn trap you, right? So I think that, you know, having the balance between, you know, a 3v3 versus 6v6 is important. But I think if Bungie goes that route, you know, with 5 maps, I think 2 of those maps should be a 3v3 focus style game. And then 3 of those maps should be more for 6v6, right? And you know what? Throw them in to both playlists just to see how they work and see what players' feedback is, right? Like if you design a map around 3v3 gameplay for things like trials and competitive, that's okay to put it in 6s. If players don't like it in 6s, just take it out of 6s, right? I'm not opposed to seeing a map that is specifically in the 6s playlist and a map that is specifically in the 3s playlist. Because I think currently, like I said, every map in the game you can get 6, or you can get that map in 6s or in 3s, right? I don't necessarily think that's the greatest idea. I think that Bungie could potentially do, you know, have one of these maps dedicated just to 3v3s. Right? Design it around 3v3 gunplay. It would be very, very fun, right? Because a lot of original Destiny 2 maps were designed around 4v4, right? So some of the maps, they feel too big. Like, what was it? It was in, I can't remember the name of it, but it was an Eternity map, or wherever that fancy Prophecy dungeon takes place. But it was a weird L shape, right? Came out with Destiny 2, I don't think the initial launch, but it came out short, like with Curse of Osiris or something like that. Not a good map, okay? Not only because it's designed, but because you couldn't tell if it was designed for 3v3s, 4v4s, or 6v6s. Well, it was designed for 4v4s, but in 4v4, you know, 3v3, it felt too big. In 6s, it felt too small and weird shaped. Like, that's one of the reasons why it's gone, right? Now, of course, there are maps like Dead Cliffs that have been here since Destiny, since the launch of Destiny 2, that work well in 3s and 6s. But I would not be opposed to seeing Bungie do specifically a 3s map and specifically a 6s map. Like, you don't get 3v3 in the 6s map and you don't get 6v6 in the 3v3 map. Only on one of each, though. But yeah, I think that outside of that, you know, the main thing I ask is balance. Again, spawn trapping, I don't like it. You know, on this map here, Burning Shrine, every good player knows that if you want to win the game, you take the inside spawn because you can hold A and C. You don't even have to spawn trap, right? You're not spawn trapping the enemy, but it's so difficult to flip the spawns, and it's so easy to hold A and C because it's a short run to and from. But if you spawn on the outside, you got to run all the way inside. You got to funnel yourself through a small doorway, right? Like it's not this is, in my opinion, is not one of the better maps, right? Same thing with, Disjunction, because it's too big. Like, we don't want to see any too big maps where it takes 15, 20, maybe even 25 seconds to see combat. Like, that's not okay. We want quick, fast-paced shooters. Like, that's what Destiny 2 is. Okay, like, yes, the time to kill are longer than other games, like Call of Duty, for example, but it is still a fast-paced shooter. We have, infinitely recharging grenades, and we have supers, and, all this stuff. So I think that just preventing, like, having maps where spawn trapping is not really feasible. Having a map where, anywhere you spawn there's a balance to it, right? Obviously I like Dead Cliffs, but Dead Cliffs has a problem with the inside spawn on, A flag. If you have A flag, you need to immediately push onto B so you can get C, or not B, C, so you can get C spawn. Because when you have A, you're spawning all the way back there, and you have to, again, funnel yourself out, right? I love Dead Cliffs, but that is one of its shortcomings. But yeah, I think that, maps that don't encourage spawn trapping, don't encourage, that prevent spawn trapping, that's important, right? Because the maps are supposed to be fun for everybody, right? You don't want, a few elite players able to spawn trap and have a blast while, 7 other players or even 8 other players don't get any kills because they're spawn traps. And the players on your team who aren't as good can't get any kills because by the time they get to combat, enemies are all dead, or they die. And then, of course, the enemy team's not having fun when they're spawn trapped. Like, if I get spawn trapped on a map where spawn trapping is very difficult to break, I'll just leave, right? The Crucible, to me, is not something I take seriously. Like, I will leave a game if I'm not having a reasonable amount of fun. And there's a difference between having fun and being angry. Like, I can be angry and still have fun. On Burning Shrine, for example, it's frustrating to spawn on the outside, but I can still have fun because you can still engage with people on the inside. But on Dead Cliffs, if I get trapped in the inside spawn, it's difficult to have fun because, you walk out and you get sniped. You walk out and you get sniped. You walk out and you get sniped. And there's not much you can do about it, right? You can't do other flanks and stuff like that. But yeah. Anyways, this video's gone on long enough, I guess. So, of course, I want to hear your thoughts on the map pack next year. What are you hoping to see from it? What do you think of my thoughts? Do you like the idea of, 4 or 5 maps? Do you think that Bungie's going to do less? Do you think Bungie's going to do more? Do you think they're going to have a fair balance? Like, what types of maps do you want to see? Do you want to see more long, more close, all that stuff? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if you like today's video, drop a like. It helps. Oh my God, sorry. Drop a like. It helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content and conversation, such as this video. And do me a favor and watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you will like them. And guys, I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.